Welcome, dear listener, to this peaceful journey through time. As you settle into comfort and allow your body to relax, we travel together to one of history's most magnificent civilizations. Let your breathing slow and deepen as we drift across centuries to the shores of the Bosphorus, where a great city once stood at the crossroads of the world. Before we begin our journey, let us take a moment to settle into stillness. Allow your eyes to close gently if they haven't already. Feel the weight of your body sinking into whatever surface supports you. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do. Only this moment, this breath, this gentle voyage through time. Now, let us breathe together. Inhale slowly through your nose, feeling your chest and belly expand with warm, peaceful air. Hold for just a moment at the top of the breath, and exhale slowly through your mouth, releasing any tension you may be carrying. Let it flow away like water returning to the sea. Again, breathe in slowly, counting silently. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold gently and release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw unclench. Feel the small muscles around your eyes soften and relax. One more time, a deep, nourishing breath in, filling your lungs completely, and a long, slow exhale, letting everything go. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are ready to travel. Close your eyes now and imagine the gentle lapping of waves against ancient stone walls. The year is sometime in the long centuries of Byzantine rule, and we are approaching Constantinople by sea. The morning light catches the water, turning it to liquid gold as our ship glides toward the most famous harbor of the medieval world, Constantinople. The very name carries the weight of centuries. Founded in 330 AD, when Emperor Constantine dedicated this new capital of the Roman Empire, the city would endure for over 1,100 years. Built upon the site of the ancient Greek settlement of Byzantium, it occupied a peninsula of extraordinary natural beauty, nestled between the Sea of Marmara and a horn-shaped inlet called the Golden Horn. Let yourself drift with the gentle motion of our imaginary vessel. The Bosphorus Strait stretches before us, that narrow channel of water connecting two continents where Europe meets Asia in an endless embrace. For 2,000 years, this sheltered natural harbor served as the commercial heart of empires, welcoming merchants from every corner of the known world. The citizens who lived here called themselves Romans, or Romaioi in their Greek tongue. They carried forward the traditions of ancient Rome, even as the Western Empire crumbled and fell. Only later historians would give their civilization the name Byzantine, a term the people themselves never used. As our ship draws closer, the city reveals itself like a dream emerging from morning mist. Great walls rise from the water's edge, their stones worn smooth by salt spray and centuries of weather. Behind them, domes and towers catch the early light. The massive form of the Hagia Sophia dominates the skyline, its great dome seeming to float above the city like a second sun. A great chain could be pulled across the entrance of the Golden Horn, stretching from Constantinople to the Tower of Galata on the opposite shore. This engineering marvel protected the harbor from unwanted vessels, transforming the entire inlet into a peaceful sanctuary where ships could anchor in safety. Archaeological excavations have uncovered the remains of over 35 Byzantine ships from the 7th to 10th centuries in this very harbor. Imagine all those vessels, their wooden hulls now long vanished, their cargoes of silk and spices distributed across 1,000 years of history. The mixture of peoples living along these shores reflected the city's colorful diversity. Armenians and Greeks, Italians and Slavs, merchants from distant lands all found their place in this great metropolis. Their voices would have mingled in the morning air, speaking a dozen languages, yet united in their shared home. Let your mind rest on this image of peaceful arrival. The water calm beneath us, the city waiting to receive us, the gentle rhythm of oars as sailors guide us toward the quay. There is no hurry in this ancient world. Time moves differently here, marked not by minutes, but by the rising and setting of the sun, by the slow turning of seasons, by the steady progression of feast days throughout the liturgical year. The Byzantine liturgical year began on September 1st, inaugurated in honor of Constantine's victory centuries before. The cycle of great feasts commenced with the nativity of the Theotokos on September 8th and concluded with her Dormition on August 15th. Between these markers, the year unfolded in an orderly procession of celebrations and fasting periods, each one connecting the people to the sacred rhythms of their faith. Most inhabitants of this empire marked time by the progression of agricultural seasons and church festivals, by weather cycles and the years that revealed what they called the divine order or taxis. In Greek, this word carried the meaning of proper arrangement, of everything in its right place, of cosmic harmony reflected in earthly life. As we step onto the stone quay, let us pause to appreciate the ground beneath our feet. This is holy ground, in a sense, sanctified by the footsteps of millions who came before us. Emperors and beggars, saints and sinners, scholars and soldiers all walked these same stones. Their stories have become part of the city itself, woven into its very fabric. The morning air carries scents that speak of commerce and faith intertwined. Somewhere nearby, bakeries are producing fresh bread, as they did every morning throughout Constantinople's long history. The prices were fixed by a city official called the eparch, who ensured that this most essential food remained available to all. The most valued bread was made from finely sieved wheat flour, with no other grains mixed in, soft and fragrant and still warm from the oven. Let your breathing continue to slow as we begin our gentle exploration of this remarkable city. There is so much to see, so much to experience, but we have all the time in the world. In the Byzantine Empire, patience was considered a virtue, and the contemplative life was held in highest esteem. The monks of this civilization spent their days in prayer and meditation, copying manuscripts by candlelight, tending gardens of medicinal herbs, watching the sunrise through church windows after hours of early morning devotion. Their example reminds us that stillness and reflection have always been essential to human flourishing. As the morning light grows stronger, the city comes alive around us, but we need not rush to join its activity. Instead, let us find a quiet corner where we can simply observe, allowing the sights and sounds to wash over us like gentle waves. The people of Constantinople believed that their city was protected by divine providence. They had seen armies turn back from their walls, watched fleets founder in sudden storms, witnessed what they considered miracles of deliverance time and again across the centuries. This faith gave them a deep sense of security, a confidence that allowed them to build for the ages. And build they did. The structures we will explore in the hours ahead represent some of humanity's greatest achievements in architecture and engineering. Yet they were created not for pride or glory, but as offerings to the eternal, as expressions of a beauty that transcended the merely human. Rest now in this moment of arrival. Feel the solid ground beneath you. Hear the distant sounds of the waking city. Smell the morning air carrying hints of bread and incense and the salt of the sea. You have arrived safely at your destination, and there is nothing you need to do but rest and listen as our journey continues. The Byzantine Empire endured for approximately 1,123 years, from the dedication of Constantinople in 330 until its fall in 1453. That span of time is almost impossible to comprehend. Generations were born and died. Empires rose and fell beyond their borders. The entire medieval period came and went, and still Constantinople endured. What was their secret? Perhaps it was this very quality of patience we are cultivating now. The Byzantines understood that some things cannot be rushed, that the most valuable achievements require steady effort over long periods, that the slow accumulation of wisdom and tradition creates foundations that can weather any storm. Let this understanding settle into your consciousness as you drift deeper into relaxation. You are safe here, in this ancient city, surrounded by walls that stood for 1,000 years. You are welcome here, as all travelers were welcomed who came in peace. You are part of a story that stretches back through the ages and forward into eternity. Our journey has only just begun. As we leave the harbor behind and turn our steps toward the heart of the city, we find ourselves approaching one of history's most remarkable defensive structures. The Theodosian walls stretch before us, their massive stones silent witnesses to centuries of siege and celebration alike. Let your eyes trace the line of these ancient fortifications as they run from north to south, spanning 5 7/10 kilometers from the Golden Horn to the Sea of Marmara. Construction began in 404 AD and was completed by 413 AD during the reign of Emperor Theodosius II. In less than a decade, workers created a defensive system that would protect Constantinople for over a millennium. The walls comprised a triple defense system of extraordinary sophistication. First came a brick-lined ditch, 15 to 20 meters wide and up to 7 meters deep. Beyond this obstacle rose a low breastwork, and then an outer wall standing 8 meters tall, punctuated by 82 towers. Finally, the inner wall soared 12 meters high and 5 meters thick, defended by 96 massive towers. In total, 192 towers guarded the city, along with 9 main gates and several secondary posterns. The inner wall towers stood roughly 75 meters apart and reached heights of approximately 19 meters. From their summits, watchmen could see enemies approaching from vast distances across the Thracian plains. The Golden Gate served as the main ceremonial entrance, built entirely of polished white marble with 3 graceful arches. Numerous statues decorated its facade, including a sculpture of a chariot pulled by 4 elephants that crowned the structure. Through this magnificent portal, victorious emperors would return from their campaigns, processing into the city amid the cheers of grateful citizens. These walls successfully defended Constantinople against sieges by Avars, Slavs, Sassanids, Arabs, Bulgars, and Rus forces for nearly 1,000 years. Wave after wave of invaders broke against these stones like water against a cliff, and still the city endured. Only 3 times in their history were the walls ever breached: during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, the recapture by Byzantine forces in 1261, and the final Ottoman conquest in 1453. In 447, an earthquake damaged significant portions of the fortifications. The timing could not have been worse, for Hunnic forces under Attila threatened the empire from the west. Yet the people of Constantinople rose to the challenge, rebuilding and strengthening their walls within just 60 days. Such was their determination to protect their home. Walk with me now along the base of these ancient stones. Feel their coolness beneath your fingertips if you wish to touch them. Notice how each block was carefully shaped and fitted to its neighbors, creating a surface that has weathered centuries of rain and wind and the occasional earthquake. The mortar between them contains crocite, a Byzantine innovation that gave their concrete exceptional strength and durability. The walls were not merely defensive structures, they were also a statement of identity, a declaration that Constantinople was the inheritor of Roman greatness and the center of Christian civilization. Behind these fortifications, scholarship and art flourished. Behind these walls, the wisdom of the ancient world was preserved and transmitted to future generations. Let us pause here in the shadow of a great tower and consider what it must have been like to serve as a watchman in ages past. The hours of the night would pass slowly, broken only by the changing of the guard and the distant sounds of the sleeping city. Stars would wheel overhead, the same stars that we see today, connecting us to those anonymous sentinels across the centuries. In times of peace, which were thankfully more common than times of war, the walls served as a backdrop to daily life. Farmers would bring their produce to the city gates each morning. Merchants would pass through with caravans of goods from distant lands. Pilgrims would arrive seeking the blessings of the city's many holy sites. Each of them would pause, perhaps to marvel at these mighty fortifications. The Byzantine approach to defense reflected their broader philosophy of life. They believed in preparation and patience, in building strong foundations and maintaining them carefully over time. They knew that threats would come and go, but the city would endure if its people remained vigilant and united. This same philosophy applied to their spiritual lives as well. The monks and nuns who populated the empire's monasteries understood that the soul, like a city, requires protection from harmful influences. They built walls of prayer and fasting, of scripture study and contemplation, creating inner fortifications as strong as any made of stone. As we continue our walk, the morning sun climbs higher in the sky, warming the ancient stones. The walls begin to glow with a golden light, their surfaces revealing subtle variations in color where different types of stone were used.
Red brick alternates with white limestone and decorative patterns, evidence that even defensive architecture could aspire to beauty. The Byzantines rarely did anything purely for functional reasons. Their love of beauty permeated every aspect of their culture, from the humblest cooking pot to the grandest cathedral. They believed that beauty was a reflection of divine perfection, and that creating beautiful things was a form of worship. Let this beauty wash over you now as you drift deeper into relaxation. The warm stones, the clear blue sky, the distant sounds of the city going about its daily business. Everything is peaceful here, protected by walls that have stood since before most of our ancestors were born. You are safe within these fortifications. Nothing can harm you here. The anxieties and concerns of your daily life seem very far away, as distant as the threats that once marched across the Thracian plains. Like the people of Constantinople, you can rest secure in the knowledge that you are protected. Before we leave the walls behind, let us offer a moment of gratitude to those who built them and those who maintained them through the centuries. Without their labor and sacrifice, much of what we know about the ancient world might have been lost. The books and art and learning that survived the fall of Rome did so because Constantinople provided a safe haven where knowledge could be preserved.
When the city finally fell in 1453, Byzantine scholars fled westward, carrying with them manuscripts and memories that helped spark the Renaissance in Italy. The seeds of our modern world were planted in the soil of Byzantine civilization, protected for 1,000 years by these very walls. Now we leave the walls and turn toward the city's heart. Greater wonders await us there. But carry with you the lesson of the Theodosian walls. That patient effort, sustained over time, can create structures that outlast empires. That protection comes not from aggression, but from steady vigilance. That the greatest achievements of humanity are those that shelter and preserve rather than destroy. Let your breathing continue to slow and deepen as we walk on through the warming morning. The city opens before us like a flower, revealing its treasures one by one. And you, dear listener, are exactly where you need to be. Our path now leads us toward the most famous building in all Christendom, a structure that for nearly 1,000 years stood without equal anywhere in the world. The Hagia Sophia rises before us, its great dome seeming to hover above the city like a promise of heaven made visible on earth. The current Hagia Sophia was built in the remarkably short time of about 6 years, being completed in 537 AD, during the reign of Emperor Justinian I. The names of its architects are well known to history: Anthemius of Tralles and Isidorus of Miletus, both men accomplished in mechanics and mathematics. They brought their considerable learning to bear on a problem that had never been solved before: how to place a circular dome atop a rectangular building. The solution they devised involved structures called pendentives,
curved triangular sections that transfer the dome's weight to four massive piers. These piers, in turn, channel the enormous forces downward to the bedrock below. The result creates the illusion that the dome floats upon four great arches, an effect that still amazes visitors today. Let us approach the building slowly, allowing its scale to reveal itself gradually. The main dome spans 32 meters in diameter, rising 55 6/100 meters from the ground to its apex. The building itself is approximately 100 meters long from the apse to the outer narthex, and 69.5 meters wide. These numbers convey the size, but cannot capture the emotional impact of standing beneath such a vast enclosed space. For almost a millennium after its construction, the Hagia Sophia was the largest cathedral in all of Christendom. Kings and emperors from distant lands would make pilgrimages to see this wonder, returning home to build their own churches in imitation of its glory. Yet none could quite capture the magic of the original. The interior contains 104 columns, many made of marble imported from the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Thus, the Hagia Sophia incorporated the beauty of earlier civilizations, transforming pagan magnificence into Christian worship. This was characteristic of Byzantine culture. Rather than destroying what came before, they adapted and elevated it. The curtain walls above the galleries and the base of the dome are pierced with windows, which, in the glare of daylight, obscure the supports and create the impression that the great canopy floats on air. This effect was intentional. The architects understood how light could be used to create spiritual atmospheres, to lift the soul toward contemplation of the divine. Now, let us step inside and allow our eyes to adjust to the transformed light. The space opens up around us, vast and yet somehow intimate. The dome soars overhead, decorated with mosaics that shimmer in the filtered sunlight. Gold backgrounds made with gold leaf sandwiched between glass create an effect of shimmering illumination, as if the walls themselves were sources of light. The poet Paul the Silentiary described the evening illumination of this space in 563 AD. He wrote that one might say some nocturnal sun filled the majestic church with light. Oil lamps hung from the dome, from the vaults, between columns, and from wall brackets shaped like dolphins, doves, and human hands. Great polycandela, candelabra holding glass oil lamps, were suspended from the dome cornice and inside the dome on long chains just above the heads of the faithful. Olive oil was the most common fuel, because it produced the brightest light. A 12-light chandelier would emit only around 40 watts of illumination by modern standards, yet the cumulative effect of hundreds of such lamps must have been magical. Sometimes the chandeliers were put into motion, swaying side to side, making the lights dance across the golden surfaces. This practice continues to this day in the monasteries of Mount Athos. Picture this scene now as you drift deeper into relaxation. Lamps suspended from great chains, filled with possibly fragrant oils, warmly illuminating the gold tesserae of mosaics and polychrome marble revetments. Added to this were the sight and scent of incense wafting heavenward, the sounds of Byzantine chant echoing through the vast space. Every sense was engaged in the worship of the divine. By the 6th century, incense was used liturgically to create an atmosphere of heavenly fragrance in churches throughout the empire. Constantinople had special shops dedicated to selling perfumes, including Attar of Roses, located near the Chalkidate, close to the Hagia Sophia itself. The Book of the Prefect detailed rules for perfume sellers who could sell pepper, spikenard, cinnamon, aloes wood, ambergris, musk, frankincense, myrrh, balsam, indigo, and storax.
Emperor Constantine had provided instructions for perfume use in new Christian basilicas: spikenard oil for chandeliers, balsam oil for baptistries, and incense for holy days. Thus, the sense of smell was as important to Byzantine worship as sight and sound. The faithful were meant to experience the divine with their entire being, not just their intellects. Kefi was an aromatic incense popular in Byzantium, containing raisins, cassia, cinnamon, saffron, frankincense, and myrrh. People burned it in their homes to aid sleep, believing that its fragrance invited peaceful dreams. Perhaps tonight, as you drift toward slumber, you might imagine that same ancient scent filling your room, connecting you across the centuries to those who sought rest in the shadow of the Hagia Sophia. The Divine Liturgy, particularly that of St. John Chrysostom, was the central worship service of the Byzantine Church. It was celebrated with chant and ritual, the congregation participating in prayers that had been offered for centuries. Almost every word pronounced in church was sung in one form or another, for music held liturgical significance that mere speech could not convey. Byzantine chant is a monophonic or unison liturgical chant that has existed for more than 2,000 years. Its main characteristics have remained constant over the centuries: exclusively vocal, essentially monophonic, codified into an 8-mode system called the octoechos, and using different rhythmic styles. The result is a sound unlike any other, at once ancient and timeless. The use of the ison, a continuous drone note, became characteristic of Byzantine chant. This sustained tone, held by some singers while others performed the melody, created a resonant and meditative atmosphere. The sound would fill the vast space of the Hagia Sophia, reverberating off the walls and dome, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Saint Romanus Milatus, who lived in the early 6th century, is revered as the inventor of the Kontakion hymn form. John of Damascus, living around 645 to 749, composed canons and is credited with the 8-mode classification system that organized Byzantine musical theory. These men and countless others devoted their lives to creating music worthy of the spaces in which it was performed. The offices of vespers at sunset and matins at sunrise are extremely ancient, using natural symbols of light and darkness to evoke thanksgiving and praise. The daily cycle of prayer connected worshippers to the rhythms of nature, reminding them that all of creation was ordered by divine providence. As the sun set, they gathered to give thanks for the day. As it rose, they assembled to greet the new morning with hope. Let us rest here now, in this sacred space, allowing the imagined sounds of ancient chant to wash over us.
The continuous drone of the ison creates a foundation of sound upon which the melody floats, just as the pendentives create a foundation of stone upon which the dome floats. Everything in Byzantine culture was connected, physical and spiritual intertwined. The windows piercing the dome's base created the illusion that the dome floated on air, suspended by light alone. This was the architect's intention, to create a space where earth seemed to touch heaven, where the material world opened onto the eternal. Standing beneath that dome, worshippers could believe that the distance between human and divine had been bridged. As you continue to relax, imagine that you are surrounded by this beauty. The golden mosaics above, the smooth marble beneath your feet, the scent of incense and lamp oil, the sound of voices raised in ancient melody. You are part of a tradition that stretches back through the centuries, a tradition of seeking peace and transcendence through beauty and prayer. The Hagia Sophia stands today, transformed over the centuries but still magnificent. Its dome still seems to float, light still pours through its windows. The ghosts of ancient worship still seem to linger in its vast spaces. And now you have visited it too, in the chambers of your imagination, where all journeys are possible. Rest here a while longer before we continue our journey. There is no need to hurry. The Hagia Sophia has stood for nearly 1,500 years.
It will wait for us while we catch our breath and allow its beauty to sink deep into our souls. Leaving the brightness of the Hagia Sophia behind us, we descend now into the cool darkness beneath the city. Here, in the Basilica Cistern, another wonder awaits us, a wonder of a very different kind. Where the great cathedral reached toward heaven, this chamber embraces the earth, creating a space of profound stillness and peace. The Basilica Cistern was constructed in 532 AD during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, the same ruler who built the Hagia Sophia above. It was designed to provide water to the great palace and the surrounding areas, a practical necessity that the Byzantines transformed into something approaching art. This underground chamber measures approximately 138 by 65 meters, covering about 9,800 square meters. The cistern is capable of holding 80,000 cubic meters of water, an almost unimaginable quantity that could sustain the city through the driest summers and the longest sieges. But it is not the statistics that capture the imagination. It is the experience of standing in this space, surrounded by what can only be described as a forest of stone. The ceiling is supported by 336 marble columns, each 9 meters high, arranged in 12 rows of 28 columns.
They march away into the darkness in every direction, their forms reflected in the still water that always covers the floor. The columns were recycled from the ruins of older buildings throughout the empire, displaying a mix of Doric, Corinthian, and Ionic architectural styles. This practice of reusing ancient materials was common in Byzantine construction, connecting new buildings to the wisdom of the past. A column that once supported a pagan temple might now uphold a Christian reservoir, its purpose transformed but its beauty preserved.
Water was carried to the cistern from the Belgrade forest, 19 kilometers north of the city. Aqueducts traced their way across the countryside, following the contours of the land, bringing life to the great metropolis. Historical texts claim that 7,000 slaves were involved in the cistern's construction, a reminder that ancient wonders were built with human labor and sacrifice. 2 columns in the cistern feature the heads of Medusa, one placed sideways and the other upside down. No one knows for certain why these pagan images were included, either as protective talismans or simply because they were the right size to serve as bases. They add an element of mystery to the space, connecting it to myths far older than Christianity. The basilica cistern has withstood approximately 22 major earthquakes since it was built.
While buildings above ground crumbled and were rebuilt, this underground chamber remained stable, protected by the earth that surrounded it. Water continued to flow into its depths, was drawn up by the palace servants, and sustained the life of the city through all its trials. Imagine now that you are walking among these columns, your footsteps echoing softly in the vast space. The air is cool and damp, a welcome relief from the summer heat above. The only light comes from flickering torches, their flames reflected in the water to create 1,000 dancing points of gold. The sound of water dripping from somewhere in the darkness creates a gentle rhythm, almost like music. Drop by drop, the cistern fills, maintaining its precious store against future need. The Byzantines understood that prosperity was never permanent, that wise rulers prepared for hard times during easy ones. This cistern was their insurance policy, carved from living rock. Let your breathing match the rhythm of those falling drops, slow and steady, each breath following the last as naturally as water following gravity. There is no tension here, no urgency. The cistern has been filling drop by drop for nearly 1,500 years. A few more drops make no difference to its patient purpose. The columns rise around us like trees in some primordial forest, their capitals blooming into carved foliage at the ceiling.
Byzantine craftsmen delighted in such details, lavishing attention on surfaces that might never be seen. They believed that God saw everything, that beauty hidden in darkness was as valuable as beauty displayed in sunlight. This philosophy extended throughout their culture. Monks would illuminate manuscripts with painstaking care, knowing that the books might be read by only a handful of scholars. Builders would carve intricate patterns on the undersides of stones where no human eye would ever see them. The work itself was the offering, not the recognition that might follow. The stillness of this place invites contemplation. Above us, the city bustles with commerce and conversation. People hurry to markets and churches, attend to their daily tasks, worry about their daily concerns. But here, beneath it all, the water rests undisturbed, a mirror reflecting the forest of columns into infinite depths. Central to Orthodox contemplative practice is the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Monks would repeat this simple phrase thousands of times, using prayer ropes to count their repetitions. The goal was not to accumulate merit, but to quiet the mind, to create inner stillness that matched the stillness of places like this. Hesychasm, rooted in the Greek word for stillness, represented the mystical heart of Byzantine spirituality.
Practitioners combined the Jesus prayer with physical and mental disciplines, seeking a direct experience of divine presence. They believed that the same God who created the vast dome of heaven also dwelt within the human heart, waiting to be discovered through patient practice. The monasteries where these practices flourished were often built in isolated places, on mountaintops, in deserts, on islands difficult to reach. But the Basilica Cistern offers its own form of isolation, a pocket of silence beneath the noise of urban life. Perhaps some Byzantine monks would come here to pray, finding in its depths a reflection of the inner stillness they sought. The water before us is so calm that it perfectly mirrors the columns above. The real and the reflected become undistinguishable, creating the illusion of columns extending downward into infinite depths. This doubling of reality was meaningful to Byzantine thinkers, who saw the material world as a reflection of spiritual truths, a shadow of eternal forms. When we gaze into still water, we see ourselves reflected. The Byzantine mystics taught that all of creation was such a mirror, showing us aspects of the divine that we could not perceive directly. The beauty of the natural world, the order of the cosmos, the capacity of the human mind for love and understanding, all of these were reflections of a greater reality.
Let your mind rest on that still surface now, allowing your thoughts to settle like sediment in clear water. You need not grasp at anything or push anything away. Simply let the mind mirror whatever arises, reflecting without distortion, then returning to stillness when the ripples fade. This is the practice of 1,000 generations, this simple attention to the present moment. The Byzantines did not invent it. They inherited it from ancient traditions stretching back to the earliest human civilizations, but they preserved it and transmitted it forward so that we too might benefit from their wisdom. Before we leave this underground sanctuary, take one more look around. Let your eyes trace the receding rows of columns, losing themselves in the darkness at the edges of vision. Let your ears attend to the subtle sounds of water dripping, of your own breath, of the silence that underlies all sound. Let your body feel the cool air and the solid stone beneath your feet. This cistern has survived for nearly 15 centuries. The empires that built it and used it have vanished. The people who drew water from its depths have been dust for generations, but the cistern remains, patient and unchanging, holding its precious contents against future need. And now we climb the stairs back toward daylight, leaving the underground forest behind. But we carry something of its stillness with us, a taste of that peace that passes understanding. The city awaits above, with all its wonders still to explore. But we have learned something here that will serve us on the journey ahead. We have learned that beneath all the activity and noise of daily life, there exists a deeper stillness. We have learned that patience and preparation create structures that outlast empires. We have learned that beauty can flourish even in darkness, and that the most precious resources are often hidden from casual view. These lessons will accompany us as we continue our journey through the Byzantine Empire. Emerging from the cistern, we find ourselves in the midst of Byzantine daily life. The streets of Constantinople buzz with activity as the morning progresses toward noon. Let us slow our pace and observe the ordinary people going about their extraordinary routines.
Unlike the Romans, who usually ate 3 meals a day, the Byzantines rarely ate breakfast. Instead, they ate only lunch, called ariston, and dinner, called deipnon. The morning hours were for work and prayer, not for filling the belly. Perhaps this contributed to their reputation for spiritual depth, for it is easier to contemplate eternal matters on an empty stomach. Bread and porridge were the main staples of the Byzantine diet, along with fish, olives, cheese, and vegetables. Fresh bread was produced every morning in bakeries throughout the city, the yeasty aroma drifting through the streets and mixing with the incense from nearby churches. The prices were fixed by the eparch according to the price of wheat, ensuring that even the poor could afford this staff of life. The most valued bread was made from finely sieved wheat flour with no other grains mixed in. Paximadion was a different sort of bread, made from barley, baked, and then sliced, then baked again until very dry and hard. This twice-baked bread could last for months without spoiling, making it ideal for travelers and army rations. Sailors would carry it on long voyages, softening it with water or wine before eating. Lamb, pork, and poultry were available for wealthier households, while fish and dairy were widespread in rural areas. Wine and olive oil were consumed daily in many households, forming the foundation of Byzantine cuisine along with bread. Honey served as the primary sweetener, since sugar was rare and expensive. Byzantine diets reflected regional agriculture, trade patterns, and religious fasting practices that governed much of the year. Major fasting seasons included Great Lent before Easter, the Apostles' Fast, the Dormitian Fast, and regular fasting on Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the year. During these periods, meat, dairy, eggs, and sometimes fish were forbidden, leading to the development of an elaborate vegetarian cuisine. Wealthy citizens lived in large stone mansions, their rooms arranged around inner courtyards that provided light and ventilation. These houses featured bathrooms, gardens, fountains, and sometimes small private chapels. Public rooms had marble floors and walls decorated with mosaics, while private rooms, like bedrooms, were usually on the second floor with painted interiors. Commoners resided in more modest dwellings, often multi-story wooden houses built using bricks and stones recycled from older, damaged buildings. Exterior walls were covered in plaster and often incised with regular lines to make them appear built from regular stone blocks, a clever way to achieve the appearance of wealth without the expense. Peasants in the countryside lived in small villages in homes made of mud brick or stone with simple furniture. Agriculture was the main occupation of the empire, with these villages and market towns containing the vast majority of the population. Peasants, tenant farmers, and small landowners cultivated the grain, wine, and olive oil that sustained urban populations and imperial armies. Let us turn our attention now to the clothing of those we pass on the street. Poorer members of society wore woolen short tunics and long cloaks, practical garments suitable for labor. Trousers were not introduced to Byzantium until the 11th century, so legs were often bare or wrapped in cloth strips. Wealthier citizens wore silk garments imported from the East, bright colors and embroidered details signaling their affluence.
Men typically wore tunics reaching the knees, sometimes paired with cloaks or belts. Women wore longer garments with veils or head coverings in public, their modesty reflecting religious values.
The color purple was reserved exclusively for imperial clothing, symbolizing the emperor's divine authority. The rare Tyrian purple dye was produced from the light-sensitive glands of murex sea snails through extraordinarily labor-intensive processing. It took thousands of these sea creatures to produce enough dye for a single garment, making purple more valuable than gold. City streets were filled with jugglers and acrobats, beggars and food vendors, fortune-tellers, holy men and preachers. The diversity of Constantinople's population meant that one might hear a dozen languages on a single block, see costumes from every corner of the known world, encounter ideas and beliefs from countless traditions. Citizens could shop in markets held in dedicated squares or in rows of permanent shops lining the streets. Goods were scrupulously weighed using official standardized weights and measures, overseen by state inspectors who regularly checked prices to prevent unnecessary profiteering. Guilds regulated professions, ensuring quality and fair wages for their members. Two broad social groups existed in Byzantine society: the honorissimos, or privileged classes, including the rich and titled, and the humiliores, meaning the humble, which encompassed everyone else. The family one was born into greatly determined one's social status and profession in adult life, though there was some mobility for the talented and fortunate. Baths and bathing were greatly popular in the Byzantine period, far more so than in the medieval West, where such practices fell into disuse. Frequent bathing was taken for granted as essential to health and dignity. The famous baths of Zeuxippus were located between the Augustion and the Hippodrome, near the Great Palace and the Hagia Sophia itself. For a relatively small fee, any member of the public could gain admission to the bath complex. The original Zeuxippus baths were adorned with mosaics, paintings, and over 80 statues depicting Homer, Plato, Aristotle, Julius Caesar, and various gods. Here the wisdom of the ancient world presided over the simple human pleasure of getting clean. In Byzantine times, bath buildings were alternately used by men and women at different hours, a practical arrangement that accommodated modesty while allowing both sexes access to this important amenity. From the 7th century, larger public baths declined due to the expense of maintaining vast water and heating systems during periods of economic hardship, but smaller neighborhood baths continued to serve the population. The rhythm of daily life was marked by bells. Church bells called the faithful to prayer at appointed hours. Monastery bells regulated the activities of monks and nuns. Even secular time was measured by the chiming of bells, connecting every moment to sacred patterns. Let your breathing take on this unhurried rhythm as we continue our walk through the city. Notice how the morning light plays on the walls of buildings, how shadows pool in doorways and alleys. Notice the sounds of commerce and conversation, the cries of vendors announcing their wares, the laughter of children at play. This is the texture of daily life in any age, the small moments that fill the hours between great events. The Byzantines lived these moments as fully as they lived their liturgies and festivals. They found meaning in work and rest, in food and drink, in the simple company of family and friends. The Great Palace, residence of the emperors, was a complex measuring roughly 600 by 500 meters, built on terraced ground overlooking the Sea of Marmara.
In its scale and character, it resembled a small city with numerous buildings, private harbors, avenues, gardens, fountains, terraces, and amenities built over nearly 8 centuries. Emperor Theophilus, who ruled from 829 to 842, conducted a lavish restoration using white marble, fine wall mosaics, and columns in rose and porphyry marble. The palace contained a bronze fountain with a golden pineapple and bronze lions spouting water from their mouths. Such wonders were designed to awe visiting dignitaries and remind the Byzantines themselves of their civilization's greatness.
The palace floor mosaics were constructed with small cubes called tesserae, about 5 millimeters long, requiring approximately 40,000 tesserae per square meter. The total mosaic covered about 2,000 square meters, containing an estimated 80 million individual tesserae. Each one was set by hand, day after patient day, until the design was complete. The mosaics depicted hunting scenes with tigers, lions, leopards, gazelles, hares, and hunters on horseback and on foot. Pastoral scenes from rural life included shepherds, fishermen, the milking of goats, children with geese, and field workers. Mythical figures appeared too, Dionysus carried by Pan and Bellerophon fighting the Chimera. Byzantine sources describe the hanging gardens of the great palace with flower beds, canals, ponds, lawns, rose gardens, and garden pavilions. The Blockinae Palace had extensive gardens, marble colonnades, fountains, and even a marble river running through the great hall. These spaces were designed for contemplation and pleasure, offering respite from the burdens of imperial duty. Monastery gardens included medicinal plants, vegetables, fruits, and flowers as forms of what might be called ecological worship. The monks understood that tending gardens was itself a form of prayer, a participation in the creative work of the divine. Their careful cultivation provided food and medicine while nurturing the soul. As the day progresses toward evening, the activity in the streets begins to change. Shops close their shutters. Families gather for the evening meal. The bells call the faithful to vespers, the service of evening prayer that marks the boundary between day and night. Let us pause here as the shadows lengthen and the pace of life slows. We have witnessed a day in the life of Constantinople, from morning bread to evening prayer. Tomorrow will bring the same rhythms, varied by season and circumstance, but fundamentally unchanged across the centuries. This is the slow passage of time that our topic promised, not the time of great events and dramatic upheavals, but the time of ordinary days following one another like beads on a prayer rope, each day complete within itself, yet part of a larger pattern that stretches from creation to eternity. Let your own day now approach its conclusion in the same spirit. Whatever tasks remain can wait for tomorrow. Whatever worries press upon your mind can be set aside for now. Like the Byzantines at their Vespers, you can offer thanks for the day that has passed and trust that the night will bring rest and renewal. The sun sinks lower over the Sea of Marmara, painting the waters in shades of gold and rose. The great dome of the Hagia Sophia catches the last light, glowing like an ember against the darkening sky. Constantinople settles into the peace of evening, its million stories pausing for breath,
before beginning again with the new dawn.
As evening falls over the city, let us turn our attention to the artistic achievements of Byzantine civilization. In the soft light of oil lamps, we can appreciate the subtle beauties that filled every church, every palace, every wealthy home in the empire. Wall mosaics were a Byzantine specialty. While the Romans had built mosaic floors, the Christian Byzantines made mosaic ceilings and upper walls, positioning their imagery to glorify God from above. When worshippers raised their eyes in prayer, they saw not bare plaster, but scenes from Scripture and the lives of saints, rendered in thousands upon thousands of tiny colored cubes. Many Byzantine mosaics have gold backgrounds made with gold leaf sandwiched between glass. When light strikes these tesserae at various angles, they create a shimmering effect that seems almost alive. The artisans would set the cubes at slightly different angles intentionally so that the surface would catch light from every direction, glowing even in the dim illumination of oil lamps. Mosaics were designed to both dazzle and instruct the largely illiterate congregation. A peasant who could not read the scriptures could learn the stories of faith by gazing at the walls of the local church. The Annunciation, the Nativity, the Crucifixion and Resurrection, the lives of martyrs and miracle workers, all were depicted in glittering detail for the education and inspiration of the faithful. Outstanding mosaic sites that survive today include San Vitale in Ravenna, Italy, dating from the 6th century. The monastery of Hasios Lukos in Greece from the 11th century preserves extensive mosaic programs in remarkable condition. Daphne Monastery near Athens contains some of the finest Byzantine mosaics anywhere, their austere beauty speaking across the centuries. Icons were another form of Byzantine sacred art, understood to manifest the unique presence of the figure depicted through carefully maintained canons of representation. In classic teaching, honor given to an icon passes to its prototype, the person depicted. Icons were venerated, not worshipped, a distinction that was important to Byzantine theologians, even if it was sometimes lost on critics. Key icon types developed over the centuries. The Pantocrator showed Christ frontal and blessing, his gaze meeting the viewer directly with an expression both stern and merciful. The Hodedriata depicted the Virgin who shows the way, gesturing toward her child as the path to salvation. The Eleusa, or Virgin of Tenderness, showed mother and child in an intimate affection. The earliest known representation of Christ as Pantocrator appears on a famous 6th century icon at the monastery of St. Catherine in Sinai. This icon has survived for nearly 1,500 years, preserved by the dry desert climate and the continuous care of the monastic community.
It shows Christ with one side of his face compassionate and gentle, the other side severe and judging, capturing in a single image the dual nature of divine mercy and justice. Byzantine iconoclasm occurred in two periods, from 726 to 787, and again from 814 to 842. When religious images were opposed by imperial decree. Icons were destroyed, artists persecuted, those who venerated images threatened with punishment. But the tradition survived underground, preserved by faithful believers who hid their precious icons until the storm passed. The triumph of orthodoxy in 843 restored icon veneration, and this event is still celebrated in Orthodox churches every year on the first Sunday of Lent. The iconoclast controversy, while devastating at the time, ultimately strengthened Byzantine commitment to sacred art. Having nearly lost their visual tradition, they valued it all the more highly. During the Byzantine Empire, book production occurred on a large scale, especially after the end of iconoclasm in 834. Illuminated manuscripts represent about 5% of Byzantine book production, but provide great insight into the artistry and learning of the age. These precious volumes were created in monastic scriptoria, where monks labored for hours each day, copying and decorating texts. Major centers of manuscript production included Constantinople, with the monastery of Studios and the Hodagon, and provincial centers like Thessaloniki and the monasteries of Mount Athos. Over centuries, Mount Athos accumulated more than 10,000 books through its manuscript tradition, creating one of the greatest libraries of the medieval world. Manuscripts written in burnished gold on vellum stained with purple from the murex shell were produced for the Byzantine emperors. Purple ink was reserved exclusively for imperial use, just as purple dye was reserved for imperial clothing. Such books were treasures beyond price, their value measured not in gold, but in the hours of skilled labor they represented. A monastic scribe would work for at least 6 hours a day, carefully forming each letter according to established standards. The best scribes were exempted from daily prayers to have more time for copying, their work considered a form of prayer in itself. By hand, letter by letter, they transmitted the wisdom of the ancient world to future generations. The scriptorium was typically a quiet room with good natural light, where monks sat at their desks with parchment spread before them. They would have prepared their inks and sharpened their reed pens before beginning the day's work. The scratch of pen on vellum was the only sound, broken occasionally by the turning of pages or a murmured prayer. Let this image of patient craftsmanship settle into your consciousness as you continue to relax. These monks believed that their work connected them to something eternal, that each letter they formed was an offering to the divine. They found meaning in repetition, peace in precision, joy in the slow creation of beauty. Byzantine chant accompanied and enhanced all of this visual splendor. Saint Romanos Melados, living in the early 6th century, is revered as the inventor of the Kontakion hymn form, a poetic sermon set to music. John of Damascus, around 645 to 749, composed canons and developed the 8-mode classification system that organized Byzantine musical theory. The Christos Anesti, the hymn proclaiming Christ is risen, is sung repeatedly throughout the Paschal season, accompanied by the ringing of bells. During those weeks of celebration, the hymn would echo through the streets of Constantinople as it passed from church to church, from home to home. The entire city became a chorus, united in joy. Byzantine monasticism combined mysticism, ascetic rigor, liturgical devotion, and contemplative isolation. 2 models existed: the eremitic or solitary tradition, following Saint Anthony of the Desert, and the cenobitic or communal tradition, following Saint Pachomius. Most monasteries blended elements of both, allowing monks to balance solitude with community. In monasteries, a large holy bell regulated daily activities. Different bell sounds communicated what the monks should do. when to gather for prayer, when to work, when to eat, when to sleep. The rhythms of the bell became the rhythms of life itself, ordering time according to sacred patterns rather than secular concerns. Worship was the most important activity, involving the liturgy and Vesper services in the main church, called the Catholicon. Central to Orthodox contemplative practice is the Jesus prayer, repeated constantly throughout the day. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. This simple phrase, offered from the heart, was believed to transform consciousness and open the soul to divine grace. Hesychasm, from the Greek word for stillness, represents the mystical heart of Byzantine spirituality, particularly associated with Mount Athos. Practitioners combined the Jesus prayer with physical and mental disciplines, seeking what they called theosis, or deification, a participation in the divine nature that transformed the whole person. On major feast days, monks might engage in up to 15 hours of uninterrupted prayer, standing or kneeling in the church as the liturgical cycles unfolded. Meals in monasteries were usually taken in silence, maintaining a contemplative atmosphere even while eating. One monk would read aloud from scripture or the lives of saints, while others ate without speaking. Mount Athos still uses Byzantine time, where hours are counted from sunset, and each day begins at sunset rather than midnight. It is a daily reminder that time is not merely linear, but cyclical, returning always to its source. As we drift deeper into the peace of evening, let us carry these images of sacred art and contemplative practice with us. The glittering mosaics and painted icons, the patient scribes and devoted chanters, the monks at their endless prayers, all of these contribute to the tapestry of Byzantine civilization. They remind us that beauty and devotion are not separate from daily life, but woven through it. The Byzantines did not compartmentalize their existence into sacred and secular realms. Everything was connected. Everything was meaningful. Everything was an opportunity for worship and creation. Let your own breathing become a kind of prayer now, each inhalation receiving what the universe offers, each exhalation returning gratitude and peace. You need not use words. The body knows how to pray through its very rhythms, rising and falling like the liturgical cycles of the Byzantine Church. The night deepens around us. Lamps flicker in windows throughout the city. Somewhere a monk is beginning the midnight office, his voice rising in ancient chant. Somewhere an artist is applying the last touches to an icon, her brush moving with practiced precision. Somewhere a scribe is ruling lines on parchment, preparing for tomorrow's work. These activities continue through the darkness, preparing for the dawn that will surely come. And you, dear listener, continue your own journey through the night, drifting toward the restoration of sleep, trusting that morning will find you renewed. The Byzantine Empire stood at the crossroads of the world, where ancient trade routes converged and merchants from distant lands met to exchange their wares. Let us explore this commercial aspect of Byzantine civilization, the flow of goods and gold that sustained the empire's prosperity. Emperor Constantine I introduced the solidus,
a high-purity gold coin weighing about 4½ grams in 312 AD. This innovation stabilized currency circulation throughout the empire and beyond. Following reforms by Emperor Anastasius I in 498, the solidus, also called the numisma, maintained remarkable consistency in weight and purity for over 7 centuries. The solidus circulated far beyond the empire's borders throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, serving as a reserve currency for much of the Middle Ages. Merchants from distant lands trusted this coin because they knew its gold content would not vary. In an age of debased currencies and uncertain values, the Byzantine solidus was as reliable as the sunrise. Coinage was necessary to pay annual taxes, and the solidus was essential for all commercial transactions of any size. Peasants might barter grain for tools in their villages, but any merchant dealing in luxury goods needed access to reliable currency.
The empire's monetary system was the foundation upon which its commercial prosperity was built. Constantinople's harbors teemed with merchants from across Europe and Asia. Traders from the Italian city-states of Venice and Genoa established permanent communities in the city, enjoying trading privileges granted by emperors who valued their commerce. Bulgarian and Russian merchants brought wax, honey, furs, and linen to Constantinople. Hides and wax were purchased from the Pechenegs, a nomadic people north of the Black Sea. Spices and manufactured goods entered from the east through trade caravans passing through Anatolian cities. The famous Silk Road terminated at Constantinople's markets, where goods that had traveled thousands of miles found their final destination. Silk, pepper, cinnamon, incense, gems, the treasures of the Orient all flowed through Byzantine hands. Byzantine markets circulated silk, spices, wine, grain, metals, and luxury crafts. All the empire's naval routes led to Constantinople and served its market. Grain boats sailed from Alexandria to Constantinople via the Aegean Islands and the Bosphorus, feeding a city that could not grow enough food to sustain itself. The Byzantine Empire has been called a maritime empire because the sea was vital to its existence. Around 550 AD, 2 Nestorian monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China, concealing them in hollow bamboo walking sticks.
This act of industrial espionage ended Byzantine reliance on Persian imports of raw silk, transforming the empire into a producer rather than merely a consumer of this precious fabric. Constantinople became the first significant silk-weaving center in Europe. After Justinian I, silk manufacturing and sale became an imperial monopoly, with processing limited to imperial factories. The secrets of silk production were guarded carefully, for this industry provided both wealth and diplomatic leverage. The silk industry was divided into 5 highly specialized guilds: raw silk merchants, importers of woven silk, spinners and weavers, dyers except for those working with purple, and silk sellers. Women handled the initial production stages of spinning and weaving, while tailors, purple dyers, and brocade makers were men. Some silk pieces were more than 6 feet wide, requiring extraordinary loom construction and collaborative weaving. In 1147,
Roger II of Sicily captured Byzantine silk weavers from Corinth and Thebes, establishing silk works in Palermo. Thus, the technology that had been stolen from China was eventually stolen from Constantinople, spreading westward as the Byzantine grip on this industry loosened. The state controlled interest rates and set stringent regulations for Constantinople's guilds, documented in the 10th century Book of the Epoch. This remarkable text details the rules governing every aspect of commercial life, from the quality of goods to the conduct of merchants. No goods useful to an enemy could be exported. Gold, salt, timber for ships, iron for weapons, and Greek fire, the secret incendiary weapon that protected Byzantine fleets. Silk dyed with Tyrian purple was forbidden for sale abroad, reserved for imperial use alone. Duty on imported goods was collected by officials called commerciaroi, who were given 1-year posts to limit corruption. The Byzantines understood that commerce required regulation, that markets left entirely to themselves would be dominated by the unscrupulous. Archaeological excavations at the Yeni Kapı port in Istanbul uncovered 35 Byzantine shipwrecks, the largest collection of well-preserved ancient vessels ever found at a single location. These ships, dating from the 7th to 10th centuries, carried goods across the empire's maritime networks. Byzantine round ships, powered by sail, ranged from 26 to 48 feet long. Oar-propelled galleys reached 100 feet in length, their crews straining at the oars in calm weather or battle. The harbor of the Golden Horn could shelter hundreds of vessels at once, their masts forming a forest along the waterfront. The mixture of Armenians, Greeks, and Italians living along its shores reflected the city's position as a global commercial center. Languages from every corner of the known world mingled in the waterfront taverns. Let your mind rest on this image of peaceful commerce, ships rocking gently at anchor, their cargoes waiting to be unloaded. The Byzantine economy was not built on conquest, but on trade, not on exploitation, but on exchange. Goods flowed into Constantinople because the city offered fair dealing, stable currency, and access to markets stretching from Britain to China. The perfume sellers near the Chalk Gate, close to the Hagia Sophia, offered exotic aromatics from across the trading world. Their shops contained pepper and spikenard, cinnamon and aloes wood, ambergris and musk, frankincense and myrrh, balsam and indigo and storax. Each scent carried the memory of distant lands, the labor of unknown hands, the miles of caravan routes and sea lanes. Empress Zoe was obsessed with perfume, training servants in the art of blending with braziers set up in her private apartment. The imperial family had access to the finest aromatics, their chambers filled with fragrances that common people could only imagine. But even ordinary citizens could purchase incense to burn in their homes, connecting themselves through scent to the wider world. The trade in aromatics reminds us that commerce was not merely about profit, but about pleasure, about the human desire for beauty and variety and experience. The Byzantines traded not just for what they needed, but for what they wanted, for the luxuries that made life worth living. As the night deepens, let us imagine the harbor growing quiet. The last cargo has been unloaded,
The last merchant has returned to his lodgings. Ships creak softly at anchor, their rigging catching the evening breeze. The water laps against stone quays worn smooth by centuries of use. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again. New ships will arrive from distant ports. New goods will flow through the markets. New coins will change hands in transactions that keep the empire alive. But for now, everything rests in the peace of night. The great chain has been drawn across the harbor mouth, protecting the fleet from any who might wish it harm. Watchmen patrol the sea walls, their torches small points of light against the darkness. The city sleeps beneath the stars, secure in its prosperity and its faith. Let this security embrace you now as you drift deeper into relaxation. You are safe within the walls of this ancient city. The commerce that sustains life continues its endless cycles. The gold coins that measure value will still be trusted in the morning. All is well in Constantinople tonight. The rhythm of trade mirrors the rhythm of the tides, the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of human life itself. Goods flow in and out. Wealth accumulates and disperses. Generations come and go. But the patterns persist, connecting past to future in an endless chain of exchange. Byzantine merchants understood this. They built their fortunes not on single transactions, but on relationships maintained across years and decades. Trust was their real currency, more valuable than gold. Reputation was their real security, stronger than any wall. These values served the empire well through its 1,000 years of existence. They might serve us equally well in our own time, reminding us that prosperity is built on patience, that wealth accumulates through steady effort, and that the most valuable things cannot be stolen or destroyed. Let your breathing continue its gentle rhythm as the commercial quarter sleeps. The warehouses are locked, the accounts are balanced, the profits are secure. Tomorrow will bring new opportunities, new challenges, new chances to prosper. But tonight, all is peaceful on the Golden Horn. We have explored the city and its people, its art and its commerce. Now let us step back and contemplate the vast sweep of Byzantine history, the passage of 1,000 years in which empires rose and fell, while Constantinople endured. In 330 AD, Emperor Constantine dedicated Constantinople as the new capital of the Roman Empire. He had chosen well. The site commanded the straits connecting the Mediterranean to the Black Sea, controlled land routes between Europe and Asia, and offered natural defenses that would prove their worth many times over. In 395 AD, the Roman Empire formally divided. The Western Empire would stumble through another 80 years of decline before finally collapsing in 476, when the last emperor was deposed by Germanic chieftains. But the Eastern Empire continued from Constantinople, carrying forward the traditions of Roman law, Roman administration, and Roman identity. The citizens never thought of themselves as belonging to a separate civilization. They were Romans, period. The name Byzantine was applied only by later historians looking back from a distance of centuries. To call themselves anything else would have seemed absurd, like suggesting that their ancestors were somehow different people. Theodosius I, who ruled from 379 to 395, made Christianity the state religion of the empire. Greek gradually replaced Latin for official use, a natural evolution given that Greek was the common language of the Eastern Mediterranean. The empire was becoming something new while insisting it was exactly what it had always been. The age of Justinian from 527 to 565 AD represented the high watermark of Byzantine territorial ambition. Justinian reconquered parts of the fallen Western Empire, including Africa, Italy, and portions of Spain. For a moment, it seemed possible that the Mediterranean might again be a Roman lake, united under a single Christian emperor.
Justinian codified previous Roman laws into one comprehensive document, the Corpus Juris Civilis, which became the foundation for legal systems throughout Europe. He built the Second Hagia Sophia, completed in 537, and the Basilica Cistern in 532. Silkworm cultivation was introduced to the empire around 550, transforming its economic prospects. But the ambition of reconquest overstretched imperial resources. Within decades of Justinian's death, much of what he had won was lost again. The 7th century brought catastrophe. Arab Muslim forces conquered Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, cutting the empire's territory in half and eliminating its richest provinces. Constantinople became the sole center of learning after Alexandria, Beirut, and Gaza fell to Muslim forces in the mid-7th century. The loss was staggering, but it concentrated Byzantine intellectual life in ways that would prove beneficial. What survived in Constantinople could be preserved and transmitted. What was scattered across the lost provinces was often lost forever. The period of Byzantine iconoclasm disrupted religious art production for decades as emperors sought to purify worship by eliminating images. This controversy divided families and communities, sent monks into exile, and destroyed countless works of art. Yet it also prompted deep reflection on the meaning and value of sacred images, ultimately strengthening Orthodox commitment to icon veneration. The Macedonian dynasty, ruling from the 9th through 11th centuries, brought a 2-century renaissance and territorial expansion. Byzantine armies pushed back against Muslim and Bulgarian foes, reconquering territory lost in earlier centuries. Learning flourished. Art achieved new heights. The empire seemed to have regained its former glory. But the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 shattered this confidence. Byzantine forces suffered a devastating defeat at the hands of the Seljuk Turks, and the emperor himself was captured. Over the following decades, most of Asia Minor, the heartland of Byzantine strength, passed under Turkish control. The empire that emerged from this disaster was diminished, dependent on outside help, vulnerable as never before. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 dealt an even worse blow. Western Christian forces gathered to fight Muslims in the Holy Land instead turned on their Byzantine allies and sacked Constantinople. The city was looted of treasures accumulated over 9 centuries. The empire dissolved into competing Greek and Latin realms. It seemed that Byzantine civilization might end not in battle against foreign foes, but through treachery by fellow Christians. The Latin occupation ended Byzantine chariot racing in the Hippodrome, which had continued since Roman times. This seemingly minor detail symbolizes the broader cultural destruction.
traditions maintained for centuries were broken in a moment of greed and violence.
The continuity that had defined Byzantine identity was interrupted, perhaps irreparably. The successor state of Nicaea recaptured Constantinople in 1261, restoring the Byzantine Empire in name. But the restored empire was only one of several small rival states, never again achieving the power or extent of its former glory. For its final 2 centuries, Byzantium survived on diplomacy and luck, playing off enemies against each other, clinging to existence by the thinnest of threads. Sultan Mehmed II laid siege to Constantinople in early 1453. The city's defenders numbered perhaps 7,000 against an Ottoman army of over 80,000. The Theodosian walls, which had stood for a millennium, finally fell to cannon fire on May 29, 1453. The last emperor, Constantine XI, died fighting in the breach. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves through Christendom. A civilization that had endured since the days of the Caesars had finally ended. The light that had burned for over 1,000 years was extinguished, or so it seemed to those who witnessed the disaster. But civilizations do not die as easily as individuals. Byzantine intellectuals had been fleeing to Italy throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, carrying with them manuscripts and memories that helped spark the Renaissance. The wisdom preserved in Constantinople did not vanish with the city's conquest.
It was transformed, translated, transmitted westward to become part of our modern inheritance. The Byzantine cultural heritage was also carried eastward by Orthodox Christianity to Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, and most importantly, Russia. Moscow would come to style itself the Third Rome, claiming spiritual succession from Constantinople, as Constantinople claimed it from ancient Rome. The chain of tradition remained unbroken, even if the links had shifted. Let this vast panorama of history settle into your consciousness as you continue to relax. 1,000 years of triumphs and defeats, of building and destruction, of loss and recovery. Through it all, people lived their daily lives, raised their children, said their prayers, and hoped for the best. The individuals who populated this millennium are mostly forgotten, their names lost to time, their faces unknown. But their collective achievement endures in the art and architecture, the literature and law, the spiritual traditions that were preserved and passed on. They built something that outlasted them, something that still influences our world today. The passage of time is one of history's great mysteries. Events that seemed crucial in their moment fade into obscurity, while developments barely noticed at the time reveal their significance only in retrospect. The Byzantines could not know that their empire would fall, or when, or how their legacy would survive. They could only do what they thought was right, and trust that their efforts mattered. This is all any of us can do. We plant seeds whose harvest we may never see. We lay foundations for buildings we may never enter. We pass on traditions to children who will transform them in ways we cannot imagine. This is the human condition, and it is nothing to fear. The Byzantine Empire is gone, its emperors dust, its soldiers forgotten, but something of what they built and believed still lives in our world. Their icons still grace Orthodox churches, their chants still fill ancient sanctuaries, their legal principles still inform modern jurisprudence, their engineering feats still inspire wonder. As you drift deeper into sleep, Let yourself join this great continuity, this chain of generations stretching back to the founding of Constantinople and forward to whatever future awaits. You are part of something larger than yourself, connected to all who came before and all who will come after. The night has reached its deepest hour. Stars wheel overhead as they wheeled over Byzantine watchmen keeping vigil on ancient walls. The same moon that illuminated Hagia Sophia now illuminates your window. Time is not a prison, but a gift connecting us to everything that has ever been. Rest now in this connection. Let the centuries hold you gently as you surrender to sleep. The empire may have fallen, but its spirit endures in all who remember and honor what it achieved.
As we approach the deepest part of our journey, let us turn our attention fully to the spiritual practices that formed the heart of Byzantine civilization. Here, in the stillness of advanced night, we can best appreciate the contemplative traditions that offered peace to millions across the centuries. The steady cycle of daily prayer offices structured time in Byzantine monasteries. Vespers came at sunset, marking the transition from day to night with psalms of thanksgiving. Matins arrived at sunrise, greeting the new day with hymns of praise. Between these anchors, the hours divided the day into segments consecrated by prayer. Monks and nuns would gather in the early morning darkness for Orthros, the dawn service, then watch the sunrise through church windows as their voices rose in ancient chant. There is something profound about greeting the sun with song, acknowledging that each new day is a gift rather than merely another unit of time to be spent. The continuous drone of Byzantine chant, called the Ison, created a meditative atmosphere in churches throughout the empire. Some singers would hold a single sustained note while others wove the melody above it. The result was a sound both simple and complex, grounding the listener while elevating the soul. This practice of the Ison was not mere decoration, but a theological statement. The sustained tone represented the eternal, unchanging presence of the divine. The melody moving above it represented the soul's journey through time. Together, they created an image of how the temporal and eternal interweave, how our fleeting moments participate in something that never ends. The rhythmic repetition of the Jesus prayer fostered inner stillness that the Byzantines called hesychia. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. This simple phrase, offered constantly throughout the day, became a heartbeat of the spirit, a rhythm underlying all other activity. Monks used prayer ropes, called komboskini, to count their repetitions. The rope typically had 100 knots, each one passed through the fingers as the prayer was offered. The tactile sensation anchored the practice in the body, while the words turned the mind toward the divine. Hundreds, thousands of repetitions accumulated over hours and days. But the goal was not to accumulate repetitions as if collecting spiritual currency. The goal was transformation, the gradual reshaping of consciousness through sustained attention. Over time, practitioners reported that the prayer moved from the lips to the mind to the heart, becoming so natural that it continued even in sleep. Hesychiasm represents the mystical heart of Byzantine spirituality. Mount Athos, the monastic republic on the northeastern tip of Greece, became its primary center, a place where hundreds of monks devoted their lives entirely to contemplative practice.
Their example inspired others throughout the Orthodox world. On major feast days, monks might engage up to 15 hours of uninterrupted prayer, standing or kneeling in the church as the liturgical cycles unfolded. Physical endurance was tested alongside spiritual aspiration. The body's discomfort was accepted as a form of offering, a willingness to suffer for the sake of communion with the divine. Yet there was also gentleness in Byzantine monasticism. Meals were taken in silence, maintaining a contemplative atmosphere even while nourishing the body. One monk would read aloud from scripture or the lives of saints, while others ate without speaking. The simple act of eating became an occasion for spiritual reflection. Monastery gardens provided another form of contemplative practice. Monks tended medicinal plants, vegetables, fruits, and flowers as expressions of ecological worship. The slow work of cultivation, the attention to growth and season, the care for living things, all of these became forms of prayer no less valid than words spoken in church. The scriptorium offered yet another path to contemplation. Monks copying manuscripts would spend 6 or more hours each day forming letters with precision and care. The best scribes were exempted from some prayer services, so they would have more time to copying, their work considered a form of prayer in itself.
Mount Athos still uses Byzantine time, counting hours from sunset and beginning each new day at sunset rather than midnight. This ancient practice keeps the monks connected to natural rhythms that modern society has largely abandoned. When the sun sets, a new day begins. When it sets again, that day ends and another begins. Time becomes circular rather than linear, returning always to its source. The monasteries of Mount Athos still preserve many of the manuscripts copied by Byzantine monks centuries ago. Over 10,000 books accumulated through the manuscript tradition, many of them unique copies of texts that would otherwise have been lost. These fragile pages connect us directly to hands that moved in prayer 1,000 years ago. Let your own breathing now become a form of contemplative practice. Each inhalation receives the gift of life. Each exhalation releases whatever no longer serves you. This simple rhythm, sustained without effort, connects you to all who have ever breathed and all who ever will. The Byzantine contemplatives understood that spiritual practice need not be complicated. The simplest things, done with attention and intention, become vehicles for transformation. A breath, a word, a step, a moment of attention to the present, each of these can become a prayer. The offices of Vespers and Matins used natural symbols of light and darkness to evoke thanksgiving and praise. As the sun set, worshippers gathered to express gratitude for the day that was ending. As it rose, they assembled to greet the new day with hope. This rhythm of gathering at the thresholds of light and darkness sanctified the most basic fact of earthly existence. We too are approaching a threshold now, the transition from waking to sleep. Like the Byzantine monks at their Vespers, we can mark this passage with gratitude for what the day has brought. We can release our concerns into the darkness, trusting that the light will return in the morning. The night office of Compline was specifically designed to prepare the soul for sleep. Psalms were chanted that spoke of rest and trust,
of placing oneself in divine protection through the vulnerable hours of darkness. Worshippers would then return to their cells and their beds, carrying the peace of the liturgy with them into sleep. Let that peace settle over you now. You have journeyed far tonight, through ancient streets and sacred spaces, through centuries of history and depths of spirituality. The journey has prepared you for rest, for the letting go that sleep requires. The Byzantine contemplatives believed that something continued to pray in them even during sleep, that the Jesus prayer internalized through long practice would sustain the soul through the night. They spoke of the heart watching while the body slept, of a deeper consciousness remaining alert to divine presence.
Whether or not we share their theological framework, we can appreciate the comfort of this belief, the idea that we are held and protected through the night, that our vulnerable sleeping selves are not abandoned but cherished, offers reassurance that transcends any particular tradition. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that you are surrounded by all who have sought rest through the ages: Byzantine monks in their cells, peasants in their cottages, emperors in their palaces, merchants in their lodgings, all joined in the common experience of surrendering to night. We are never alone in our need for rest. The same darkness that fell over Constantinople falls over you now. The same stars that guided Byzantine sailors guide planes across your sky. The same moon that silvered the waters of the Golden Horn casts its light through your window. We are connected across time to all who have ever lived. Let go now of any remaining tension in your body. We will take a moment to release this tension, traveling through each part of your body, as the Byzantine monks might have done before sleep, bringing awareness and then peace to each region. Begin with your feet. Notice any tension held there in your toes, your arches, your heels. Breathe into that space and let it soften. Feel your feet becoming heavy, sinking into rest like ships settling at anchor in the Golden Horn. Now your legs, your calves, your knees, your thighs. Let them release any holding, any tightness. Feel the muscles unknot and smooth, like silk threads unwinding from their spindles, heavy and warm and completely at ease. Your hips and lower back, this region that carries so much of daily life, let it release into the surface beneath you. Feel the support that holds you as the great walls held Constantinople, asking nothing of you but your trust. Your belly and chest. Notice the gentle rise and fall of your breath. Let any tension in your core dissolve like incense smoke rising in the Hagia Sophia, dissipating into nothing, leaving only peace behind. Your hands and arms, your fingers that have worked today, your wrists, your forearms, your upper arms, let them grow heavy and still. The scribes of Constantinople would rest their writing hands at day's end, and so may you rest yours now. Your shoulders and neck, places where worry often gathers. Breathe into these spaces and invite them to soften. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let your neck release its vigilance. You are safe. You need not be on guard. Your face, the small muscles around your eyes, your jaw, your forehead,
These muscles that express so much throughout the day can now be utterly still. Let your expression become as serene as a Byzantine icon, peaceful and timeless. Your entire body now rests in complete stillness, every part released, every region at peace. Like the great city at midnight, all activity has ceased, all commerce paused, all labor set aside until morning. Let go of any lingering thoughts about yesterday or tomorrow. Let go even of the images and ideas we have explored tonight. They have served their purpose, carrying you to this threshold of sleep. Now they too can rest. The contemplative traditions of Byzantium continue to offer wisdom to all who seek peace. Their central teaching is simple. Stillness is possible. In the midst of a chaotic world, in the depths of a restless mind, a center of calm can be found and cultivated. This is the gift they pass on to us across the centuries. Receive this gift now as you close your eyes. The stillness that monks sought in their cells is available to you in your bed. The peace that worshippers found in Hagia Sophia can fill your room. The presence that contemplatives sensed in their prayers can embrace you as you sleep. Nothing is asked of you except to rest. Nothing is required except to let go. The contemplative life that the Byzantines cultivated is, at its essence, simply this: presence to the moment, trust in what holds us, willingness to receive whatever comes. Sleep comes now like vespers, marking the end of one day and the promise of another. In the darkness, something new is being prepared. In the rest, restoration is at work. By morning you will be renewed, ready for whatever the new day brings. Let the chant of the Esons sound within you, a sustained note of peace underlying all other experience. Let the Jesus prayer become your heartbeat. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Or let there be only silence, the deepest prayer of all. We have traveled far through the night, dear listener, through centuries of history and depths of spirituality, through streets and sacred spaces of the Byzantine world. Now, as the first light of dawn begins to touch the eastern sky, we approach the end of our journey together. Imagine that you are standing once more on the harbor of Constantinople, but now the day is beginning rather than ending. The Sea of Marmara catches the first rays of sunlight, transforming from black to deep blue to silver touched with gold. Ships at anchor begin to stir, their crews preparing for another day of commerce and travel. Somewhere in the city, bells are ringing for matins, calling the faithful to greet the new day with prayer. The monks of the Studios monastery are already at their posts in the scriptorium, ready to begin another day of careful copying. Bakers are pulling the first loaves from their ovens, filling the air with the warm scent of fresh bread. The great dome of the Hagia Sophia catches the light before anything else, glowing rose and gold against the pale sky. For a moment it truly seems to float, suspended between earth and heaven, between time and eternity. Those who saw this sight each morning understood why they lived where they did. This was the center of the world. The Theodosian walls stand as they have stood for centuries, their stones now warm with the growing light. Watchmen who kept vigil through the night prepare to hand their posts to daytime guards. The city they protected has survived another night, will survive countless more. There is no hurry. The walls will wait. In the basilica cistern, darkness persists, for the sun does not reach those depths. But the water continues its patient accumulation, drop by drop, maintaining the reservoir that has sustained the city for nearly 1,500 years. Some things do not need light to continue their essential work. Some things flourish best in stillness and obscurity. The markets are beginning to open. Merchants are arranging their wares, checking their scales, preparing for the day's transactions. The hum of commerce that provides the city's lifeblood is starting again, as it has started every morning for centuries. Coins will change hands, goods will find new owners, the economy will turn another revolution. But we do not need to join this bustle of activity. We can remain here on the quiet harbor, watching the light grow stronger, feeling the warmth of the sun on our faces. We have learned what the Byzantines knew, that there is value in stillness, that not all moments need to be productive, that simply being present is itself a form of participation in life. The fishermen are pushing off from the quays now, their small boats heading out to cast their nets.
They will return later with catches of mackerel and anchovy, sardines and sea bass, the bounty of these fertile waters. Their work is as old as the city itself, older even, stretching back to the Greek settlement of Byzantium that preceded Constantinople by 1,000 years. Let the rhythms of this awaking city serve as a gentle transition for your own consciousness. You have rested deeply through our night journey together. Now you can begin to stir, to feel your body more clearly, to sense the room around you. There is no hurry. Take all the time you need. The Byzantine Empire has passed into history, but its legacy surrounds us still. Every time we enter a domed building, we inherit their architectural innovations. Every time we see an icon or hear Orthodox chant, we encounter their sacred art. Every time we invoke legal principles derived from Roman law, we benefit from their preservation of ancient wisdom. More than these specific inheritances, we carry forward their understanding that civilizations can endure, that beauty matters, that spiritual depth is compatible with commercial prosperity, that the past and future can meet in a living present. These insights are perhaps more valuable than any artifact or text. The light is full now, the morning established. Constantinople goes about its business as it has for 1,000 years, but you and I have come to the end of our journey together. It is time for us to part, for you to return fully to your own time and place, carrying whatever treasures you have gathered along the way. Perhaps you will remember the golden mosaics of the Hagia Sophia, the way light played on their surfaces, creating the illusion of heaven touching earth. Perhaps you will remember the forest of columns in the basilica cistern, reflected in still water that has gathered for 15 centuries. Perhaps you will remember the patient scribes at their manuscripts, the chanting monks at their prayers, the merchants weighing silk with standardized scales. Or perhaps you will simply remember the feeling of peace that our journey offered, the sense of connection to something larger than yourself, the rest that came from surrendering to an ancient rhythm of life. This feeling is yours to keep, yours to return to whenever you need it.
The gates of Constantinople are always open to those who come in peace. Thank you for journeying with me through the Byzantine Empire. Thank you for your patience and attention, your willingness to let imagination carry you across centuries and continents. Thank you for resting in the stillness we found together. The sun is fully risen now over the Sea of Marmara. A new day has begun in the Queen of Cities, as it begins now wherever you are. May the peace of this journey stay with you as you wake. May the wisdom of the Byzantines illuminate your path. May rest restore what the day will demand. And now, gently, whenever you are ready, allow yourself to return fully to the present moment. Feel the surface beneath you. Hear the sounds of your own environment. Let your breathing shift from the slow rhythm of sleep to the natural rhythm of waking. The Byzantine Empire waits in history, always available for another visit. The peace we found there waits in your memory, always available when you need it. And rest, that universal gift, waits again at the end of each day, ready to receive you into its gentle arms. Be well, dear listener. Sleep well when sleep is called for. Wake well when waking comes. And carry with you always the knowledge that you have traveled to one of humanity's greatest civilizations, walked its streets, entered its churches, learned its wisdom. The journey ends, but what you have received endures. Good night.